Ah, the beauty of the Dream Grove. You know, sometimes you just gotta take a moment to just sit, relax, and enjoy the view and your surroundings, and just kind of take in the beauty of the world around you. And the Dream Grove in Val'Shara is an excellent example. Anyways, enough sitting around. Reason we're here is to actually go over the lore of the artifact weapons that the Druids get in Legion. And forgive me, I've been a little cautious about this one because, of course, as you know, this is the only class in the game that has 4 different specs here. So, yeah. And I've been working at getting some of these secret, special appearances for some of these. I was working recently at getting this special appearance, just because I thought it looked really, really cool. But yeah, that was a teensy bit of a grind to get that. Plus, I was also wanting to work on this. Some think this doesn't work on a Tauren, and maybe it doesn't, but still, I think it looks really cool. Anyways. The Tome of the Ancients, as recorded by Celadine, the lead historian of the Dreamweavers. We shall start off with the weapon that has been around since vanilla. The Scythe of Elune. The weapon that you now hold is a physical, tangible representation of both the divine and the savage, of serenity and untamed ferocity. The scythe is not only a weapon, but a symbol. Perhaps its greatest lesson is that the traits of tranquility and furor exist within all living beings, and sometimes the best that we can hope for is to find balance. My Pandaren came out for a second there. May the Scythe of Elune grant you the strength to destroy your enemies and the wisdom to know when to stay your hand. Hope you enjoy the pleasant, tranquil music of the Dream Grove as I read these. But I don't want them to be too loud. There we go. Hopefully that'll be a decent level for the music where it doesn't prevent you guys from being able to hear me. For millennia, the Scythe of Elune has served as both an embodiment of sacred power and a caution against unbridled rage. By the way, I've got my water, some Gatorade, cough drops. I got stuff nearby because, my throat might end up being sore by the end of this video. Long ago, in the War of the Satyr, beleaguered Night Elf forces faced off against an army of demonic foes. Some felt an advantage was needed to turn the tide of battle. To this end, the Scythe was created, joining a fang from the wolf ancient Goldrun with the divinely empowered staff of Elune. Just want to give you guys a nice cool view of this secret appearance. If you're curious how you get this appearance, you have to get exalted with the Dreamweavers in Val'Shara. Then you have to purchase one half to create this from the emissary. Then you have to go to the Darkheart Thicket dungeon and hope that it drops from the first boss. It has a very small percentage chance of dropping, though I only need to reset and do that dungeon like 4 or 5 times before it dropped. So I don't know, maybe I had an insane luck, or maybe it was just supposed to drop after a few times. It is written that the Scythe's creation sprouted from the enmity of a druid, Relar Fangfire, and the broken heart of a priestess, Belisra Starbreeze. Relar believed that he could harness the rage of the pack form to aid the outnumbered Night Elves against their demonic enemies, but his proposal was denied by the Archdruid Malfurion Stormrage, who felt that the form was too unstable. When Relar's best friend Arvel refused to assume the pack form and died at the hands of demons as a result, Relar chose not only to embrace the form, but also to seek out ways of enhancing it. Relar found an unlikely ally in Arvel's beloved, the priestess Belisra Starbreeze. Together, Relar and Belisra joined the Fang of Goldrin with the Staff of Elune to create the legendary Scythe of Elune, a weapon that would alter the course of history. The Scythe of Elune has displayed myriad powers over the millennia. During the War of the Satyr, when the headstrong druid Relar Fangfire used the Scythe of Elune to enhance the pack form, the result was disastrous. Many druids turned into worgen, feral creatures that viciously attacked both friend and foe. So it was that the Archdruid Malfurion Stormrage obtained the Scythe and used it to banish Relar and his fellow worgen to the realm of the Emerald Dream, where he hoped that they would remain pacified at the base of the majestic tree, Doralnir. It is known that shortly after the War of the Satyr, the Scythe of Elune vanished. Thousands of years later, the Scythe would be rediscovered by a Night Elf priestess, Vilende Starsong. Desperately seeking a way to overcome yet another incursion of demonic forces, Vilinde channeled the Scythe's powers to call forth the worgen from their place of banishment in the Emerald Dream. However, Vilinde was unable to control the summoned worgen. She sought help from a human mage, but en route to find the sorcerer, she was attacked and killed, and the Scythe was lost to history once again. Throughout its history, the Scythe of Elune has changed hands many times. One temporary holder of the Scythe was a timid and extremely lucky resident of Duskwood named Jitters. Jitters discovered the weapon in an old mine called Roland's Doom. An account written in Jitters' own words tells of his retrieving the Scythe, at which point he and his comrades were attacked by worgen. They came at us from everywhere, clawing from hidden holes at our feet and dropping upon us from silent perches above. Jitters was the only person to escape the worgen onslaught, though he lost the Scythe of Elune during his harried fight from the cursed mine. An excerpt from the Journal of Archmage Carlane. It was with those cursed beasts, the worgen, at our backs that we rushed into the mine named Roland's Doom. There we beheld an exceedingly gruesome and, to me most of all, heart-rending sight. My son, held by clawed worgen hands, knelt beneath the blade of what I would come to know as the Scythe of Elune. The beasts were performing some profane ritual on my boy, an initiation of sorts to enlist him in their wolf cult. As I watched helpless to intervene in time, the wolf cult leader's glistening fangs sank viciously into the bare shoulder and chest of my only son. With a gut-wrenching cry rising in my throat, I attacked. By the way, if you end up making and playing a worgen druid, this really brings more relevancy and meaning to playing that kind of character while you are doing the entire worgen starting zone, and then of course carrying over to if you decide to start your questing in the places such as Darkshore and like the Night Elf areas in Upper Kalimdor. Because as you can probably guess, the Night Elves and the worgen, especially with the Scythe of Elune, have quite a bit of connection. The Scythe of Elune has been connected to a mysterious and merciless group of relic hunters known as the Dark Riders. It was shortly after the Scythe was discovered at the mine Roland's Doom that the Riders first made an appearance, butchering a local family in their search for the sacred artifact. After the Scythe was claimed by a priest named Revel Cost, the Dark Riders waylaid him and his companions. This attack was in turn interrupted by the commander of the Night Watch, Althea Ebenlock. What happened next is shrouded in mystery, as the entire assembly disappeared in a blinding flash of light. Testimony of Revel Cost, priest of the Church of the Holy Light, to Archbishop Benedictus. It was my firmly held belief that I acted on behalf of the light. We had recovered the Scythe of Elune from Roland's Doom. I used it as bait to ensnare a band of shadowy profane thieves known as the Dark Riders. As we fought, the Riders teleported us to Karazhan, fabled tower of the one-time guardian Medivh. It was from there that the riders had originated, seeking artifacts for the tower's menagerie and hidden trophy room. Despite the riders' best efforts and the intervention of the trophy room's curator, their taking of the scythe was not meant to be. With the aid of my companions and my unwavering devotion to the holy light, I helped put an end to the Dark Riders' unholy campaign. Prior to the great cataclysm that befell Azeroth, the Scythe of Elune was transported secretly into the walled territory of Gilneas via underground tunnels. At this time, the scythe changed hands from an SI-7 gnome assassin, Brink Spannercrank, to Night Elf supporters of Gen Greymane, King of Gilneas. Sorry. It was briefly taken by Forsaken agents, but ultimately the actions of heroic adventurers returned the weapon to the Night Elf's possession. From Priestess Balisra Starbreeze's account of the death of Alpha Prime, leader of the Wolf Cult. It had been Alpha Prime's foremost goal to retake the Scythe of Elune. He still harbored resentment towards the Archdruid Malfurion for spurning him when he was simply Relar Fangfire, the druid who wanted to take on the pack form during the War of the Satyr. Prime wished to use the scythe to call forth his brethren from the Emerald Dream to besiege our beloved home of Darnassus. I battled Alpha Prime to the limit of my abilities, but even my greatest efforts proved insufficient. Prime took up the scythe and was prepared to summon his Worgen brethren when he was vanquished by a phantom, the spirit essence of my fallen love, Arvel, who had promised millennia ago that not even death would keep us apart. My love kept his promise, and the Scythe of Elune remained in my keeping. From the writings of Balisra Starbreeze. Arvel, there is not a day that goes by when I do not think of you, my love. The sacrifice that you made so long ago, and your reappearance in my hour of greatest need. These are never far from my mind. I vow to you that I will atone for my past indiscretions, for my role in unleashing the Worgen curse upon the world. I will find a way to set matters right. As I write this, I prepare to travel with Valorn Stilbo to Duskwood to further my studies of the Worgen. I pray that your spirit will forever guide my heart and my hand. Perhaps at last, with the help of the Scythe of Elune, we will find a way to grant those who are afflicted with the Worgen curse the one gift that matters most: peace. Alright. So obviously Scythe is very connected to the Worgen. So if you're playing a Worgen Druid, it makes a lot of sense. And yes, I'm going to take a moment to show off a bit, though. I mean, my ultimate goal is getting that toy from Fandral Staghelm in the Firelands. So this is obviously not the actual form you're going to be using from the artifact weapons in Legion. You're going to be looking more like the cat wild god, Ashimane. But, I mean, what can I say? I love this look. I was able to get some of the seeds, and I have the buff currently going on where you appear as a druid with Flamewand cat form. And I want to use this because I honestly think this form looks a lot cooler than any of the other cat forms that you can get. Well, maybe not all of the cat forms you can get from Legion, but I think it certainly looks cooler than the secret appearance, which I'm not really that interested in getting because I'd rather not look like a cat owl thing. But anyways, if you're curious, these are the weapons. There are a couple of dual daggers, but they are supposed to modify the look of your cat form if you're playing Feral. And sadly these days I don't really play Feral that much. It doesn't really work for me right now. I want it to though, someday. I really hope they do something for Feral that makes it far more appealing to play compared to the other forms. The Fangs of Ashimane. By reclaiming these weapons, you have struck a heavy blow against the forces of evil. In their hands, these daggers would have been more than a danger. They would have been a sacrilege. These are all that remain of a revered wild god who gave her life in defense of Azeroth. Do you know her story? The Druids of Al-Sharal who protected these weapons for so long could tell you about her. Some of them even remember her. Her name was Ashamain. She left a powerful legacy, and very soon, it will be yours to wield. Azeroth was once smoldered in darkness, but after the Titans broke the old god's black empire, natural creatures finally had a chance to grow and flourish. A keeper named Freya was tasked with seeding the world with life. She created lush enclaves across all across Azeroth that gave rise to countless animals. On occasion, extraordinary creatures captured Freya's attention. As Freya traveled, she found a wolf pack that had killed a panther and was trying to finish off her lone surviving cub. Though the wolves had wounded the tiny creature, she still fought fiercely, swiping viciously with her claws at the bigger predators. Freya was astonished to see that before long, the wolves were driven away, unwilling to suffer further inquiries for their meal. When Freya picked up the cub, the keeper endured a flurry of small scratches for her trouble. That did not anger her. Quite the contrary, delighted by the creature's unrelenting wildness, the keeper healed the cub's injuries and named her Ashamain for the color of her striking black fur. Over the years, Ashamain grew into a massive panther. No wolf pack dared to hunt her now. Freya was pleased to see that the panther did not succumb to desires for vengeance. Ashamain could have stalked and killed every wolf in her valley, easily, but she didn't. Her wild nature granted her understanding. Was she not a predator as well? Did she not hunt prey? The wolves had no vendetta against Ashamain. They had been hungry. She bore no malice towards them. But she did enjoy toying with them. The wolf pack that had attacked her would sometimes be woken from sleep by an ear-shattering roar. Ashamain would creep up to their den and announce her presence loudly, sending them fleeing. Over time, Ashamain realized that she had become more powerful than any other panther she had ever seen. The passing years did not age her, but instead made her stronger. Generations of wildlife came and went before her eyes. There were other animals like her, powerful, iconic creatures who seemed to live a different existence than the rest of nature. Mortals would soon refer to them as wild gods. Ashamain was one of them. Ashamain's untamed heart had difficulty accepting immortality. The chaos of the wildness and the struggle for survival, they had been the core of Ashamain's being. Now they were irrelevant. She had ascended above her old life. There was no prey that could evade her. There was no joy in an effortless hunt. There was no predator that could challenge her. Ashamain strode openly through the jungles of Azeroth. Other wild creatures had nothing to fear from her. Stories of a giant, majestic panther spread among the trolls who ventured into the area. Some sought to venerate her as one of their Loa. Ashamain rarely let them see her. By the way, wild gods are basically Loa, so the trolls basically considering her a Loa is really not that far off, because that's basically what Ashamain was. In fact, that's what all the wild gods pretty much are, Loa. Other trolls tracked her for a different reason. Certain hunters craved the glory that would surely come from bringing down such a magnificent being. Defeating a Loa? There was no greater challenge. And as we all know, anytime the trolls decide to either take control of or kill a Loa, it always turns out well, right? One by one, these ambitious trolls crept into the jungle, arrogance burning in their hearts. Ashamain was delighted. No matter how clever they were, no matter how silently they moved, or how true their aim, they all returned to their tribes empty-handed, and the sound of her roar still ringing in their ears, and the sight of her fangs forever haunting their dreams. She did not need to take their lives. They understood their place in the wilds when she was done with them. That was enough. Whenever Keeper Freya traveled the land, many wild gods walked by her side. Ashamain did not. The panther's heart was too unwilling to be tethered to any other creature. Freya understood, and she always smiled when she saw Ashmane's glowing eyes watching her from afar. No matter what Ashmane thought, there would be a connection between them. There was another realm, a wild, untouched place called the Emerald Dream. Keeper Freya had used it to seed life all across Azeroth, and thus the wild gods were bound to it. Eventually, Ashmane came to Mount Hyjal to experience the dream for herself, and she was immediately taken with this thriving vision of an untamed world. The panther made her home on the western slopes of the Well of Eternity, and spent thousands of years drifting in the Emerald Dream, exploring its mysteries and power. Ashmane, like many wild gods, lived apart from the burgeoning civilizations that rose and fell across Azeroth. The Zandalari trolls held no interest for her. Many elves saw themselves as ascendant, too enlightened to be bothered with the natural world. But there came a time when she could no longer ignore Azeroth. The Emerald Dream shook with the arrival of the Burning Legion. Eventually a disciple of another powerful being, Cenarius, called upon the wild gods for aid. For Ashmane, her duty was clear. She rushed into battle with the Burning Legion without hesitation. A new predator had come into her world. She was glad to hunt it. By the time the wild gods had joined the War of the Ancients, the fighting had spread far beyond the Well of Eternity. The demons who strayed into the forest outside Zin Ajari soon learned to tread carefully. Ashmane stalked the trees. Her fangs ended the war for many Burning Legion scouts. So greatly was she feared that the Legion took to burning down entire swaths of forest before attempting to advance past her. If the demons believed that they would have better luck fighting on an open battlefield, they were sorely mistaken. Ashmane was enraged by their tactics, and she joined other wild gods, elves, and additional creatures in attacking the Legion's flanks, ripping huge holes in their battle lines. Hold on, let me take a drink. There seemed to be no end to the demons' numbers. When Ashmane fought the Burning Legion 10,000 years ago, her instincts told her that the invaders had specific prey in mind. Tearing herself away from the thick of battle around Zin Ajari, she tracked raiding parties that had determinedly cut their way northwest. It was not easy to keep up. The demons set their best warriors to discourage pursuit, and Ashmane had to fight every step of the way. But she was not deterred. Those who stood in her path fell one after another. As she closed in on her prey, she understood their target. They were aiming to claim Suramar. This is why Ashmane is so honored by the Druids of Al-Shara. What she did next has never been forgotten. An army of demons was preparing to lay siege to Suramar. Ashmane faced it alone. She had never visited the forest near Val-Shara before, but that did not matter. Excuse me. They were the wilds, and thus, they were her home. She ripped through the demons' ranks and then disappeared into the trees. She crept along the high branches and dove down upon the Legion commanders. She was a terror, a fearsome beast, and she held nothing back, offering no mercy. It was a slaughter, and yet even a wild god could not avoid injury at the Burning Legion's hands. Scorched by fell fire and poisoned by their tainted weapons, Ashmane fought on, thinning their ranks until their leader was forced to face her himself. That had been her plan all along. It was one of the laws of survival. The pack was not defeated until its leader's throat was between her jaws. A Burning Legion general had volunteered to oversee the conquest of Suramar. This pit lord, Ronokhan, saw endless rewards in the Elven city and wanted to claim them in Sargeras' name. He became enraged by Ashmane's interference and stepped forth to personally deal with her. The wild god and the Anahilan general, the pit lord general, dueled in the forest of Al-Shara for hours. He was a cunning fighter. He knew how fast she could kill, so he kept her at bay with his jagged, fell-wrought spear, content to inflict small, grazing wounds. After so much war, Ashamane's strength was finally beginning to fade. Her wounds ached, her pace slowed, but her will was unbroken. With the last of her strength, she leapt at Ronakon, allowing him to drive his spear through her chest, yet her claws dug into his shoulders, and her fangs sank deep within his neck. Ronakon thrashed madly, trying to pull the panther away, but she held on. Her teeth remained embedded in his throat until he died. His death brought more destruction. The fell power granted to him by the Legion exploded outward, tearing a deep gash in the land and burning Ashamane to ash. Her sacrifice was not in vain. Suramar's residents had been given enough time to hide their city from the Legion and the world, protecting themselves from the sundering that would follow. The land around Val'Sharah had been altered forever. Where there once had been a hill, now there were a cliff and a deep valley. It took many years for the Druids to restore nature in the area to its previous beauty. Despite the lingering traces of Ronakon's corruption, there was always a sense that something was opposing it, helping to sweep it away. Some Druids came to believe that Ashamane's spirit, even after death, was still committed to fight against the invaders who had threatened her wilds. The Druids built a shrine at the site of the Pit Lord's death to commemorate Ashamane's courage. Her fangs, all that survived the violence of her passing, were placed there to honor her unbending heart and untamed nature. To this day, Ashamane is remembered as one of the fiercest defenders of Azeroth. Okay. Before we take a look at the claws, let me go ahead and briefly show you guys. I'll go ahead and turn that off. This is the extra form. But if you're curious, that's Ashamane right there. That's supposed to be how she looked. Here are some of the other extra appearances. This is the upgrade appearance where you can make her look like a tree. It's called Nature's Fury. There's another one, kind of makes her look like a tiger with stripes. Really cool. Incarnation of Nightmare. Where this one, I guess, makes her look more like as if she had fallen to corruption to the Burning Legion. Ghost of the Pride Mother. Sadly, that's one I'm never going to be able to get because that was part of the Mage Tower. But anyways. I'll go with that one. So yeah, it is cool, but like I said, I still like being able to use these seeds to do that fire cap. Okay. Next up. For the Guardian spec, the tank spec, the bear form spec, the Claws of Ursoc. If you're curious, they look like these. They're fist weapons. They're supposed to look like bear claws. This is the secret appearance that you can actually get from... You can get this to drop off of his namesake from the Emerald Nightmare, Ursoc. This guy. These are his claws that I am using, and this guy drops this secret appearance. And you can even get this specific look that he has as appearance. I believe it's the PvP one. You have to get like honor level 30, I think it is. So, anyways. By the way, if you want to see the quests where I acquire these, I have a separate playthrough of this druid going through the artifact quests to get them, as well as the Val'Sharah quest line and such. So, the Claws of Ursoc. You have been blessed by the wild gods. Please understand the honor that it has been granted to you. Ursol believes that you are the right champion to carry on his brother's work. May the spirit of Ursoc drive you onward to victory. Let me take another drink. Excuse me. Ursoc's legacy is known to every druid on Azeroth. As one of the great wild gods, he challenged the Burning Legion 10,000 years ago and bravely laid down his life in defense of this world. He was a true guardian. He believed in the power of the wilds, and he never hesitated, even for a moment, to leap to their defense. But now he can rest. Others will need to continue his work. Many millennia ago, two inquisitive bear cubs roamed the area around the Grizzly Hills together. You remember the Grizzly Hills, right? From Northrend? Wonderful place, wonderful music. These brothers, named Ursoc and Ursol, which you can also get Ursol's appearance, by the way, as well, if you want to pursue that, had more curiosity than good sense, and they frequently found themselves trespassing in the domains of bigger predators. Danger did not discourage them, and each one never left the other behind, even when circumstances seemed dire. They caught the attention of Keeper Freya, who was traveling across Azeroth in search of exceptional wild animals. Freya recognized their potential and saw what they would become. When they matured, they grew stronger and bigger than any other bears in the Grizzly Hills, and they did not suffer the ravages of aging. Ursoc and Ursol became known as wild gods. Perhaps the most unusual gift that Keeper Freya gave the two bears was the ability to speak. A few other wild gods, particularly those who would become known as the August Celestials, the ones from Pandaria, also received this gift. While they were chosen for their intelligence, the two bears were chosen for their stubborn bravery. Freya believed that Ursoc and Ursol would one day change. When they finally saw enough of Azeroth to satisfy their curiosity, they would be compelled to protect it from any enemy that would threaten it. She knew them well. Ursoc, the older of the two brothers, had a strong protective streak. The more he saw of the wilds of Azeroth, the more he felt that it was his responsibility to preserve them. Give you guys another angle of this form. There we go. Keeper Freya saw how the instincts of the wild gods matured over the years, and she noticed that some of them were natural guardians of their domain. For those creatures, she began to create unique weapons, items that would aid them in times of trouble. But these artifacts would only become as strong as their wielder made them. Their true potential could only be unlocked with practice, nurture, and self-improvement. Some wild gods did not understand what Freya had given them, and they neglected their weapons. Ursoc was not one of them. Freya gave Ursoc new claws, fashioned out of a rare material called Titan steel, and imbued with a small portion of the essence of Aonar, one of the Titans. These claws could grow in length and were nearly indestructible. Ursoc had no intention of letting them waste away and decay. He dedicated himself to mastering their power. Once Ursoc received his new claws, he trained tirelessly. Every day he traveled long distances and sparred with his brother, testing his strength. Over the years, he grew stronger, much stronger. Ursol had received a gift too, a staff that eased the use of magic, and he soon mastered his own power. Ursoc's Titan steel claws became an extension of his body, and Ursol became an expert in manipulating the flows of magical essence. Together, they had become some of the most powerful wild gods in existence, and they would soon become known as Azeroth's staunchest defenders. Eventually, Ursoc and Ursol accompanied Keeper Freya on her journeys across Azeroth. She confided in them that she sensed dark forces at work, and they made sure that she was safe. As they traveled with her, they received their first glimpses of the Emerald Dream, the realm that Freya had created to guide Azeroth's natural life. They spent as much time as they could within those untouched wilds, drawn to the dream's thriving, vibrant vision of nature. One day, Freya asked to travel alone. To both Ursoc and Ursol, it sounded as if she was biting... I'm sorry. It sounded as if she was bidding them farewell. Before she left them, she offered more wisdom about their weapons and their other gifts, and she told them to remain prepared. Azeroth will need you. If you do not stand ready, the world may fall, she said. The wild gods never saw her again. The darkness that had claimed the mind of Keeper Loken had also corrupted hers. Which is why we then free her in Ulduar. 10,000 years ago, a threat unlike any other set its gaze upon Azeroth, the Burning Legion. After corrupting important members of the Elven civilization near the Well of Eternity, invaded with all of its might and fury, the first Druid, Malfurion, though that's still debatable considering that it says that Cenarius first taught the Taurens how druidic magic instead of the Night Elves, but whatever, called upon the wild gods to fight back against the demonic hordes. Ursoc and Ursol were the first two wild gods to respond. They rushed into battle with the Legion's Doomguard, landing the initial blows in the war between Azeroth's wilds and a fallen Titan's twisted army. It was a desperate fight against overwhelming odds. Neither brother hesitated for an instant, and even when the full wrath of the Burning Legion was wrought against them, they did not run. They fought until their last breaths. Many wild gods perished in the war against the Legion. Ursol and Ursoc remained together, fighting back to back, using Freya's gifts to bring down waves of demonic enemies. But their strength had limits. An unending tide of Fellstalkers finally overwhelmed them, and they both died in battle. Their spirits traveled together to the Emerald Dream, where they stayed for millennia. Ursoc's claws were all that remained of him in the physical world. When the fighting moved elsewhere, a young Furbolg found the Titan Steel claws. Recognizing whom they had belonged to, he took them to his tribe. For generations, those Furbolgs worshipped the claws as the final sign of the bear god, Ursoc. Few Furbolgs had the courage to try to wield Ursoc's claws in battle. Every time they did, the results were horrifying. Ursoc had spent untold years mastering their power and unlocking their potential. In the hands of an untrained mortal, they inspired an uncontrollable bloodlust that lashed out at friends and as easily as enemies. After a number of attempts, the claws ceased to have any effect at all on the Furbolgs. No matter what rituals they tried, it seemed as though the power in the claws had become dormant. Ursoc's spirit, standing guard in the Emerald Dream, had simply seen enough. The Furbolg tribe was not capable of controlling his power, so he withdrew it from the claws. It would not return until someone worthy claimed them. Members of the Druids of the Claw eventually brought the Titan Steel Rod artifact to Ursoc in the Emerald Dream. Ursoc's desire to protect Azeroth had not wavered, even after death. He and Ursol roamed the Emerald Dream, searching for any signs of corruption of darkness taking root in the realm. Recently, the return of the Emerald Nightmare drew their attention. Ursoc fought Xavius, the Lord of the Satyrs, and a pawn of evil forces, in an attempt to eradicate the Nightmare's influence. For a second time, Ursoc made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of Azeroth. Now, Ursoc can finally rest. Ursol, his brother, continues watch inside the Emerald Dream, fighting against the Nightmare. Ursoc's claws no longer belong to the wild gods, but to those who can carry on their work. Only someone with a guardian spirit as determined as his will be able to wield them in battle. And woe unto any enemy that has to face a creature as dedicated as he. So yeah. And lastly, the healing spec, Resto. The Staff of Gahanir, the Mother Tree. And yes, this is the secret appearance, which you can actually get just right over there, actually. If you have the talent to plant seeds in fertile soil and grow trees, you can actually get this to sprout from that tree. So. Okay. See if I can give you guys a pretty decent angle of it right here. Gahanir, the Mother Tree. The Emerald Dream is at risk. The nightmare seeks to corrupt all of its power. This branch was critically important in keeping the dream stable and peaceful, but it is not safe to leave it there any longer. You are one of the most astonishingly capable druids in history. Carry this staff with you, protect it, and use it to drive the Legion off of our world. Fun fact, you get a unique title just for acquiring this artifact. In Azeroth's ancient days, natural life never had a chance to emerge due to the horrifying reign of the old gods. Without help, nature would not have risen at all. The Titans knew this. One of their final acts of aid for us was to give the Keepers the knowledge and power to reverse the old gods' unspeakable destruction. In time, nature would rise, life would flourish, generations of plants and animals would grow and change. This miraculous recovery did not come from any one place, but at the beginning. There was a source of healing and balance, a place where all life could rest and revive. It was called Gahanir, the Mother Tree. Hold on. Take another drink. Keeper Freya was charged by the Titans to guide the seeding of Azeroth's natural life. To aid in this task, she shaped a mystical realm that would become known as the Emerald Dream. She wanted it to be an unspoiled vision of nature, undisturbed by the forces of evil or external civilizations. She began by creating a single massive tree set atop a high peak within the dream. From it bloomed many different fruits and flowers, and new life flowed outward in waves sweeping across the land. Freya sculpted pools of life in other locations within the Emerald Dream, but this tree was the first, the tallest, and the most radiant. For millennia, it served as a source of healing and balance that extended beyond the dream and into the physical world. As life flourished on Azeroth, generations of animals came and went. Soon the Emerald Dream was filled with the spirits of countless beasts. That first tree that Freya had created, Gahanir, became a haven for winged creatures. Its many boughs and branches had room for all, and its healing, peaceful energy calmed even the most distressed minds. Many powerful spirits were drawn to Gahanir. Some wanted to simply gaze upon it. Others wanted to sit at its base and bask in its shade for a while. One never left. A wild god named Aviana made the Mother Tree her home for as long as she lived. Or Aviana. Aviana was known as the Mistress of Birds. Unlike some other wild gods, she did not keep herself distant from lesser, mortal creatures. She was a predator, delighting in swooping down on prey from the sky. Eventually she was called something new, the Mistress of the Mother Tree. She had grown utterly enchanted with Gahanir. It was more than a tree. It was a source of life, healing, and peace. Aviana spent years melding her power into the tree, and soon all living winged creatures on Azeroth dreamed of spending the afterlife flying through its branches. Aviana's spirit became intertwined with the Mother Tree. In time, this would have lasting consequences. 10,000 years ago, Azeroth was invaded. The Burning Legion stormed onto our lands and waged war on all who would resist it. There were few people inclined to fight back, and they were greatly outnumbered. The first Druid, Malfurion Stormrage, called upon the wild gods to join the fight. Not only would a Legion victory eradicate the elves, but it would also spell doom for all life on Azeroth. Many wild gods answered Malfurion's cry. Aviana was one of them. When the wild gods joined the battle against the Burning Legion, the demons were taken aback. Surely they had not been expecting nature to produce such powerful enemies. That day will never be forgotten as long as Azeroth remains free of the Legion's control. Aviana led flocks of birds from all the land on the hunt for Legion minions. Untold numbers of demons died to her and her children. But the Burning Legion's forces were too great. Aviana fell from the sky, and the demonic spears ended her life. The shock of Aviana's death reverberated through the Emerald Dream, and all the leaves of Gahanir fell from their branches. The great Mother Tree, home to the spirits of countless creatures, was dead. Many mourned for it, and some succumbed to the temptation of serving dark forces in Aviana's absence. But although she had died, her spirit still lingered. As the Night Elves struggled to rebuild their society in the wake of the Sundering, members of the Green Dragonflight discovered a gift. A single branch of Gahanir, with a single acorn hanging off of its leaves, had been left in their keeping in the Emerald Dream. The acorn was used by Alex Straza, aspect of the Red Dragonflight, to create Nordrassil, the great world tree that would protect the second well of eternity. Malfurion Stormrage sensed that Aviana's spirit had been the one to bestow the branch of Gahanir, and he believed that it was best kept hidden. Many of Aviana's children had been lost to chaos, and they might be driven to claim any remnant of her legacy for their new masters. Quietly, Malfurion moved the branch of Gahanir to a safe location deep within the Emerald Dream. Only a few people ever knew where it was kept, but its influence was felt far and wide. For many millennia, the branch served as a stabilizing force for the Emerald Dream, and the land near it was said to be a place of great healing and peace. The events of the Cataclysm shook Azeroth and the Emerald Dream to their roots. As the Night Elves fought to repel the forces of Ragnaros from Mount Hyjal, they asked the champions of Azeroth to summon new allies, or to be specific, old ones. Many of the wild gods who had died in the War of the Ancients were resurrected. Aviana returned to life on Azeroth and joined the Horde in the Alliance in successfully pushing the elemental forces back into the Firelands. In the end, Ragnaros was killed, and Mount Hyjal was saved. Aviana turned her attention to Gahanir once again. Times had changed, but her dream of providing a spiritual haven for her kind had not. She set out to restore the Mother Tree to its full glory. The branch of the Mother Tree remained in the Emerald Dream. Unbeknownst to the Druids, the forces of the Emerald Nightmare were already gathering for an assault. When they investigated key sources of power within the dream, they discovered the true nature of Gahanir. The Satyr Lord, Xavius, working on behalf of the Burning Legion to taint the dream, ordered his forces to exercise caution. This branch of Gahanir was corrupted slowly, very slowly, in such ways that even its guardians could not sense it. When the nightmare revealed itself, this branch suddenly pulsed with evil. Had it been left corrupted, it might have thrown the entire Emerald Dream into chaos. Since it has been cleansed, that plan, at least, was thwarted. It is too dangerous to leave Gahanir hidden anymore. The nightmare covets the branch's power. Obscurity will no longer suffice. The strength of the Mother Tree must be used to drive the forces of evil away from Azeroth. Aviana agrees, and sends it off with her blessing. Perhaps one day this branch will be returned to the dream to once again bring peace and stability to the realm. But for now, its true value will be in the hands of a champion. Its destiny is to save countless lives and cleanse corruption from our world. Which is why we then use it as a resto druid to do healing. And yes, I do like using this as a transmog when I do play resto druid in either dungeons or raids, because hey, resto druids might arguably be the best healing spec in the game right now. I actually have stopped using the treant form to do healing just because sometimes it kind of like doesn't work properly with the interface or something. I don't know. I've experienced bugs with it, so I just stopped using it. So, anyways, so those are the weapons that you get in Legion. Pretty awesome lore. Lots of lore involving the War of the Ancients and the Wild Gods. So, definitely, and you can also see why the Druid campaign, while it may not be incredibly relevant, it's actually still pretty fun. And the quests are still pretty good, pretty enjoyable. And of course, Druid right now is still one of the best classes in the game, at least currently. So, we will be taking a look at the class's weapons lore when we return. Stay tuned.